And I thought I'd invite a very special guest and friend to the show today, Ahmed. He is not only an international judge, he was also instrumental in the World Online Gouldian show that took place last year. He is certainly an ambassador extraordinaire for the Gouldian Finch, educating other breeders and keepers in the form of doing talks and that at their clubs, and also judging their shows. And this is all as a hobby. This isn't his actual full-time career. So it's really amazing the work that he's been doing. So with that in mind, let's have a chat. Ahmed, perhaps to start, you could give us, or give the viewers, should I say, a bit of background as to who you are as a keeper breeder, just from a personal perspective. When did you get into the hobby? When did you sort of start with Gouldians?
Well, thank you, Clyde, for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the House of Gouldians for the fabulous work that you guys put on YouTube channel to educate all newcomers and to refresh the memory of existing breeders. It's a fabulous work. So thank you so much for all the hard work that you guys put there. I'm Ahmed Al Alawi. I'm from Bahrain. I started with the passion for Gouldian Finches in 2013, and this was when my wife actually got me my very first pair.
Okay.
Little she knew at that time that she's opting herself for competition.
All right.
So a pair suddenly became 200 birds. So 2013 December was a start for me. I knew very little about Gouldian Finches. The story actually started in summer 2013, where I was visiting a friend to see some zebra finches, right? And my eyes fell on a seed bag that had a picture of a Gouldian finch on it.
Okay.
And I totally ignored the gentleman who hosted me. I hope I'm not disrespectful. I was like, hey, mate, what's that bird on that bag over there? And he said, well, I think it's called Gouldian, but it's very hard to breed. It's so, they die very quickly. They're very fragile. And, so it got stuck in my head there. Immediately that day, I went home. I started Googling, what is this? So I started learning about Gouldian Finches, and I was looking in the local community whether anybody is offering them for sale.
Okay.
And then in December, I started with that. They were very small, the very common type that come to us, imported from Asia.
All right.
And then in 2014, I wanted more robust types. So I introduced the Dutch type into my aviary.
Okay.
And eventually between 2014 to 2015, which is 2 seasons, I got familiar with several mutations. And this was like a pendulum box. This was like, woohoo.
Okay.
You have a yellow bird, you have a silver bird, you have a blue bird. So apparently I did not know about splits at that time. It was like I was, taking very, very humble baby steps. And then I realized that this bird is even much more fascinating because I got involved into the Lutinos, the albinos through the splits. So eventually I got more and more fond of the bird. Obviously, being in Bahrain, the community here, when it comes to Gouldian Finches, they're quite shy because of the common cliche stereotyping that this bird has unfortunately had, between it being so hard to breed, between it being so weak in terms of, living. From there, I got very, very addicted to the online community between North America, between Europe, some parts of Australia as well. So I started building a nice network of friends.
Okay.
And we were exchanging experiences. For me, it was not the local community physically, it was the internet. Okay. So then I started understanding more and more about show type Gouldian Finches. So in 2017, I made a trip to Spain. And this is when I actually went to Malaga to meet my friends, the Vera family, to start with. And I saw some of the most spectacular birds, to be very frank with you. It's like, whoa. You look at the feather length and how it helps the head of the Gouldian finches become so round, so beautiful. So now the definition becomes show type Gouldian finch from very common type Gouldian finches. They're all beautiful, but you have different levels and different standards now.
Yes.
So this was my entrance into show quality Gouldian finches in 2017. And since then, I've been trying to keep few lines that I managed to create my own since 2019.
All right.
It's been very beautiful, to be very honest, a beautiful journey. There is much more in terms of, how it all started in Bahrain as well. In 2018, we hosted the very, very first local show for Gouldian finches with a friend of mine. So it was more educational, where we did a presentation. In 2019, we had our very first judge for Gouldian finches coming down to give us, to score our birds against points. So that was something very, very beautiful. Yeah.
It sounds like you were the typical newcomer, if I can put it that way, and I was exactly the same. And I think as you sort of get involved with other people that are a bit more knowledgeable and they can guide you. And I was very fortunate. I joined our sister club in the country that has been around for about 25 years. There's a show standard established in this country. So the groundwork was already there. Whereas I believe for you, it was a lot more of a struggle because it wasn't really a bird that was commonly kept in Bahrain from what I understand.
We basically here had to start from scratch.
Okay.
We had to build the foundation, help the community have a good understanding about the bird, about its natural habitat, how to breed it, blah, 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 and then move on to the show quality as well. Okay. We created our own standard, which is a stem of the NBV standard, the NBVV standard, which is the Dutch organization for the ornithology community.
All right.
So today we have quite a beautiful community. When I was a few years ago, I was an orphan.
Okay.
But yeah, we built from scratch. So we're there now.
I take my hat off to you because I think a lot of newcomers to the hobby would have given up before they even got past year one. So yeah, it's just amazing from what I've read and that of you, just the amount you've actually accomplished over the years is extraordinary.
So, yeah. Pleasure. Thank you.
Out of interest, if you have to think back on the last couple of years and your current sort of view of the bird, what is it that sort of drives your passion for the Gouldian? Is it the genetics? Is it the showing of them? What is it actually?
To me, two things stand out. Whenever, you need a fuel back into the hobby, I just remind myself about how amazing this bird is in terms of color structure.
Okay.
To a layman, you just see 7 colors in a classic bird. But eventually, you develop this understanding of the head, for example, is a mixture between carotenoids and eomelanin. And the breast is a pure factor of pheomelanin. And now you go to the belly, which is pure lutein. And then you come and it becomes to you like another, if I may say, a beautiful picture with a different frequency to look at, right? It's like when you're wearing glasses, but your glasses can read different language. So this is very, very fascinating for me in the Gouldian finch world, definitely. The second thing about the bird is its habitat.
Okay.
It's not like, you get a male and you get a female and then you expect surprise to happen. They go in a cycle. They are very intelligent. In the same time, they are selective of each other at the right time. And then you go through the course, you will notice that this bird is extremely loving and caring for its chicks. but you've got to have the patience, if I may say. You've got to have that patience as a breeder. And when you do have that, and you keep on trying, you will be very, very rewarded like no other species. And in my current room, I have zebra finches, I have canaries, mainly Gloucester and color canaries. I also have society finches as well. But I'm telling you, Gouldian finches are just so different.
I've seen the awards given to you, the certificate given to you. You were a seriously big aspect, if we can put it that way, or driving force, maybe is the better way to put it, behind the World Gouldian Show. So tell us a little bit about that. What sort of led to that?
It has been a total pleasure for myself to be instrumental in making this project happen, to be very frank with you.
Okay.
There is a ton of people who made it successful, to be very frank with you.
Okay.
I must say big thanks to my wife, because she put up with me. We both are working parents, except she comes back home for the kids and I come back for the World Online Gouldian Show. Okay. This was like 3 to 4 hours a day after working hours, on the go throughout the months. Okay. Yeah, so she put up a lot. Without her support, that would have not been able to take off. Secondly, I'd like to thank a great person who actually enabled the trigger. So I came up with this idea because it was COVID time.
Yes.
I was used, I just explained to you earlier that 2017, I got into the mood of show quality Gouldian Finches. 2019 is where I started to travel to see international shows, the Mondial or the Spanish League. And then 2020, I did it again. And then I said, that's it. I'm dedicating a budget every year. It's going to be a beautiful break of 10 days where I visit bird shows around the world and get to meet my friends. But then what happens? Everything dies. Okay. Do you remember the time in 2020, late 2020, 2021, and everything was stagnant. Many countries were in lockdown. So what happened to the ornithology world, ornithology show world? It just went dead, totally dead. So this idea started saying that, why don't we come up with an idea and implement it so that the breeders from wherever they are in the world, they can actually participate in it for the very first time. Because when you look at the World Cup, it is dedicated to Europe. And then there is a similar World Cup for South America. Okay. Now, there will be one in North America for the very first time. But if you look at the World Cup in Africa, it's going to be in Morocco for the very first time now in December. But then again, it's so hard for people from South Africa to participate in that because of the travel, the logistical consequences that the bird goes through. So what about the bigger community for Gouldian finches? What about my friends in Thailand? What about my friends in New Zealand, in Australia, and South Africa, and in Canada even? So we wanted to make a trial. Yeah. Not to say that the conventional way of doing shows is not great. We wanted to make that trial. So I presented this idea to Hans de Boer from NBVV. He's a great mentor of mine. And I'm telling you, this is a fabulous person, big heart, a heart to give back to the community. And he said immediately, Amen, let me speak to the board. Okay. So a bit of time, and he came back and he said, yep, you've got the support of the board. NBVV is on. NBVV will support with judging. Okay. So then it was down to me to start nibbling, who can be a sponsor here, who can be and, thanks to my team, actually, Javier Pina from Spain, who's living in Scotland. Also, there were a couple of fundamental members who actually, without them, it would have not picked up. So Patrick Leppe, for example, from Netherlands, together we came and we put our heart into it. And slowly, we noticed that there are great people who actually are risk takers, if I may say. There is no such risk, but we faced a lot of people who are risk averse. No, it's online. No, it's going to be video. We don't want this. It's not a real show. And I kept on reminding people, we're not saying that conventional style of shows is dying. We are saying that, God forbid, there is a new pandemic coming up in 2023 or 2025. We don't want another lockdown because it's bad for the culture of ornithology, right? Now we have a prototype, a blueprint, and we tried it and it works. It's fabulous. We have, we had a great success. 22 countries participated, over 400 birds. It was a lovely experience, to be very frank with you.
I must admit, for South Africa, it was mind-blowing, to say the least, when I first heard about it. I'll never forget that day. I sort of woke up having a cup of coffee in bed before I get up. I'm blessed my wife brings me a cup in bed in the morning. And looking through social media, and I see this advert for this. I'm like, what's this about? And I clicked on it and I'm like, hang on. So I immediately started making phone calls and saying, hey guys, have you heard about this? And this is to other sort of club members and all the rest of it. And the excitement was unbelievable, because South Africa, our sort of importing of birds is virtually impossible at a finch level. So we can't get new birds into the country, and we certainly can't take birds across the border to go show them and then come back into the country and that kind of thing. So we're very isolated in that regard. So when the concept when we saw what it was all about, from a person that was very, I thoroughly enjoy the physical shows, to be actually able to compete on a world level was just mind-blowing for us. So it was a massive initiative that you guys undertook, but so appreciated in South Africa. And I know some of the guys were a little bit cautious. I think they wanted to see what it was all about and how you would sort of reconcile the differences between the standards and things like that before they took the risk of putting birds on themselves. But the couple of us that decided, no, we don't mind, even if we come stone last, because our type's very different to Europe, we're going to participate for the sake of being part of this amazing initiative. So that's kind of
I tip my hats off just to you and your team members for taking that step. And that's exactly what I meant by some people were not risk takers, so they were risk averse. Yes. And some people said, let's get into it. And, kudos to all of those who made it a success. We came together, and, there's a great lady from Netherlands. Her name is Marriott. She always says, she has a quote that says, birds connect us. So that is a great slogan that the World Online Gouldian Show has proven, to be very frank with you.
True. And I think that's, for me, one of the values of the hobby. And I don't want to go down, obviously, the lines of politics, but like you say, it's a common ground that people from all walks of life can identify with. And we can build on that common interest. And break down some of those traditional barriers, whatever they might be. So for me, it's very exciting. The next sort of thing that I wanted to chat to you about is just, you're an international judge. I personally am doing my judges under the South African sort of certification process. But what is involved in becoming an international judge with the European, the NVBB, you said?
Right. So I will answer you in terms of the NBVB, which is where I got my license from. The journey starts with an appeal. And after the appeal, should you be successful, you'll get into an interview with a smaller panel where they want to understand exactly what are your real motives. And once they understand that it's a genuine motive, so you start with a program. I am very, very appreciative of the NBVB. First, I must thank a great gentleman, a great friend of mine, Bill Solomon says, because the whole thing started with him. Oh. A great person, big heart, forgiving. He saw the passion when he joined us in Bahrain, and he agreed to help me based on my request, because I tried almost everywhere, from North America to France to Italy, to get an opportunity to be taught to become a judge for Gouldian Finches. But then again, language barriers, nobody was willing to do any kind of remote or distant learning, if I may say. But NBVV was very open-minded from that perspective. So special thanks to my friend Bel Solomons, special thanks to my friend Hans de Boer, special thanks to our friend also Albert Sommer, who was an executive sponsor at the time for the program, and for my great teacher as well, Henk de Vos. So this community has helped me a lot learn. So the material was theoretical, and most of the time it was in English, so that people like me can find it easy to learn. Some of the material was still in Dutch, which is okay. And then from understanding the theory, we started implementing the assessment forms, understanding the scoring criteria and how to score a bird using pictures, 2D pictures, and then using videos. So that was the theoretical part of things. And then it was time for me to do the practical part. But because of COVID, the show in 2021 got canceled. So my trip had to be also delayed. And NBVV hosts annually, they host a show of their own, which is for all the birds that they are categorizing under their umbrella in January of every year, which is a fabulous opportunity to reunite with great people. Yes. But again, it was delayed in 2020, it was delayed in 2021. So as a result, I had to wait to try and see what I can do with regards to 2022. Luckily, the board has decided that through my teachers, through my mentors, luckily they've decided that I have acquired enough knowledge, especially through the World Gouldian Show, to get into an exam using live or video type recording, where a bird is in a show cage, and I was given about 30 birds to judge in a very tight time. So my skills were really put into into the crunch, if I might say. Yeah. I'm sure the guys were laughing on the other side of the camera. It was great fun for me. So NBVV is a great organization because the standard is very, very thorough. Okay. What I learned as well, before starting the program, I was always thinking, oh gosh, the birds will be like very harshly judged. And how do we match between a bird coming from Asia or a bird coming from South America or South Africa? But once you get into the program, you learn to see the bird for what it delivers.
Makes sense.
The structure is only one piece, but then there is a whole story behind it, from drawings, markings, from attitude, from feather quality, which is the plumage, for example, or the condition, from the cleanness of the legs and the completeness of the toes, for instance, to the head, to the beak. So it's a lovely composition of many, many things that gives you the chance. And a golden rule that I've learned from NBVV as well is when you're judging, always judge with the breeder in mind. Don't judge for yourself, judge for the breeder. So when you're writing the notes, the breeder has to understand what is it about the bird that needs to be improved.
Makes sense.
So that story is with me. It's carved, if I may say, in my head. So even today, when I do my teaching to the students who come to me to learn about the standard, I always tell them, don't be so harsh. As human beings, our nature is always to find the negatives. Be optimistic. Look at the positives first. The negatives are always coming. So that was, in a nutshell, the NBVV story, if I may say.
I find that encouraging because I think that's what perhaps certainly the Southern Hemisphere clubs like ourselves, if you look at the Australian standard, I know we'll sort of get into that a little bit later, but the South African standard and the Australian standard in terms of shape of the bird is very similar. So for
Right.
us, when we looked at the concept and sort of saw the Spanish model, if you like, or type, and then sort of the Scottish type and that kind of thing, which is a lot sort of a more robust bird in terms of the shape. I think that's what a lot of the guys sort of went, whoa, we don't stand a chance. So I'm very pleased that we're having this discussion, because you're quite right. There's a lot more to the bird than just the shape. So it's important that people realize that. And yeah, it's fascinating. And I know it's something that we're going to get into shortly, but for me, it was a big eye-opener comparing the standard that you sent me, which is obviously the NVBB standard, to the South African standard, and realizing actually how much the two standards do have in common. They're very similar in terms of what's required for the color, what's required for the markings, the feet, the beak, the head shape. All of that is virtually identical. Yes, when you get to the profile, if you want to call it that, of the bird, the actual model or type, yes, there's quite big differences. But from a points perspective, it's not where the majority of the points are sitting.
Correct.
Very
Because if you look at the standard, and if you look at the table breakdown of the scoring, you work it out from bottom top, right? You've got 55 points dedicated for color in general, be it color intensity or regularity or the drawings.
Okay.
That's 55 points. That does not mean the bird is going to make a big difference whether it comes from Thailand or it comes from South Africa or from Canada. Those markings are common and should be in a show quality bird. And then the eggs, that's another 5 points. The head and the beak, we are all in consistency about the principle. So roughly speaking, you're talking about 30 points only, which could be the primary difference from one standard to the other standard. But then again, in the 30, I would say you're talking roughly about 2 to 3 points maximum.
In terms of the World Show, maybe you can go through a little bit of detail around who competed, which countries competed, and sort of why the guys shouldn't be put off if they were the only guys that were interested in Australia, for example, so that they can be encouraged to give it a try the next time.
Okay, so when we started with the World Online Gouldian Show, throughout the networks that we had established and throughout some of our greatest sponsors as well, we managed to gain interest from breeders originally from 38 countries.
Okay.
And that covered, I'll try to be as accurate as possible.
Fair enough.
So we started with Thailand, we had Belarus, we had Russia, we had New Zealand, we had Australia, and India and Pakistan.
Okay.
Then countries expressed their interest from Asia.
Okay.
And then from Europe, we had interest coming from breeders from Turkey, from France, from Spain, from Italy, from Portugal. We had those countries who exhibited, of course, Netherlands as well. They expressed their interest. We had Greece, we had Malta. All of them countries said, fine, we will participate. And then from Africa, it was yourselves, from South Africa, from Tunisia as well. We had a little bit of interest from Morocco, but then it kind of faded away.
Yeah.
And then from North America, we had USA and we had Canada, obviously.
Okay.
And from South America, we had Chile, we had Argentina, we had Brazil, we had Peru. So them countries had breeders who were interested. And the last but not least was Cuba as well.
Okay.
All lovely community. I contacted them through, me and my team contacted them through Facebook, through Instagram. So social media has helped a lot, tremendously. And then when the actual show got closer, it was time to submit the videos. The 38 countries shrunk down to 22. The primary reason for that was that a lot of the birds were now shedding feathers.
Okay.
So we did not allow for videos to take place very early on, and it was the first time to do it. So it's a learning curve. But out of the 22 countries, we had about 420 odd birds, if I'm not mistaken, 428 acceptable videos that actually made it through to the scoring criteria.
Okay.
There were videos that were eliminated due to the faults in them. And the journey was lovely because the judges had this opportunity to see birds from all over. They were very excited to see birds from South Africa, to see birds from Thailand. They're so used to seeing birds from France, Spain, and Holland, and But then again, they saw birds from Arabia and they saw birds from South Africa, and it was wow. They are very beautiful. And when we hosted if you remember, when we hosted the exit meeting for the Gouldian Gouldian show, they were admiring the South African birds. They were admiring the Thai birds as well, who actually won. I think the third across the whole globe, or the second is from Thailand, who ranked out of the top 5. So it's fascinating to see all of that. Now, on the other side, if you ask the breeder, how did he feel? He said, it's like a dream. I never thought I would be competing with the world champions who always we hear about. So, for example, the great breeder from Holland, Henk Lemoder, his female became the world champion. And that happened, a female won the whole world grand champion. And that happened because all the males that were eligible did not have the extended tails. This was explained to us by the judges in the last meeting as well. So this is the opportunity for the females to come up in a world of diversity and inclusion nowadays. In the world of Gouldians, they get a chance, right? So it was a very great experience for the breeder, great experience for the judges. And I think it was a beautiful, noble exercise for the countries to show their strengths and their culture, or at least raise awareness about their countries to the bigger world as well.
Bringing it back to you for a moment, give us a quick overview of the breeding cycle in Bahrain of the bird. So typically, I know you said that our seasons are exact opposites, north and southern hemisphere, so there was a 6-month sort of difference. But what is a typical sort of breeding season in terms of timing and that kind of thing? Where does your show season end? When do you start pairing, austerity, that kind of stuff?
Okay, good. So there are 3 types of breeders here in my region, and I'm talking about Bahrain, I'm talking about the Gulf region, and parts of the Middle East region as well.
All right.
There's the part who breed in aviaries outdoor.
Okay.
And those obviously purely down to the climate changes. Okay. So obviously the birds stop breeding in summer. And then starting somewhere around October, you'll see the birds are getting in condition for breeding, and these birds will stop at around August, May timeframe. Okay. And then you've got the second layer of the breeders, and those breeders who are indoor breeders, like myself. I do breed indoors, so I try to have a controlled environment in terms of temperature and humidity and lighting, of course. So then there's 2 branches. There is one branch who I refer to as the greedy branch, and they never stop breeding. So what they do is every bird goes through the cycle by itself. Okay. But whenever, for example, the bird is now molting, it gets removed so that it can be molted, and then another pair gets paired up so that, the breeding is almost always on around the clock. Okay. And then there is the breeders that are like myself, who like to see the seasons. So for me, it starts between October and it ends at around April every year. So in October of every year, I will come about to pair we start seeing eggs in October itself. And then if we're lucky, we get some chicks as early as November. And that cycle continues all the way to April. When April comes, it's about now separation. So nest boxes get removed. And now birds go to aviary so that they can fly. The seed and the diet throughout the molt. And then when the molt is over, now the birds are rested. So austerity seeds get offered, which is basically 2 to 3 types of seed mix. So they're about roughly 60% canary seed, 30% will be about white millet, and just roughly about 10% could be, let's say, panicum or yellow panicum or Japanese millet, or grass seeds. So it's very humble, kind of low nutrition seed. Is good for maintenance, if I may say. And then you start back again in September, warming up the kitchen, if I may say. So and this is the time where you disturb the missus, asking for the grater and asking for the, mixers and all these kind of things again. So we bring up the fat, we bring up the protein back into the cycle again. So we start the biological clock. Of course, the lighting also resonates. Yes. So at peak breeding season, you're talking about 16 hours light time, 14 to 16 hours of a light time. And then it goes down gradually. And then in peak molt season, it is at around 10 to 8 hours. For me, it's 10 hours, 14 to 10 hours. And my colleagues vary depending on what they are used to. We've seen success in this kind of model because when you start the breeding the season after, the birds are fully energized. They are ready. Yes. They respond very well to austerity diet. And then they respond very well to the increase in protein as well, right after that. Okay. So it becomes a very good season. But if you're the type who constantly just breeze, then the birds also don't respond as well. After maybe 2 seasons, you'll notice that there is a slump. Yes. It's like all the birds are saturated, if I may say. Yes. I hope that gives you a feel between, light, between the seasons and the temperature. Obviously, it needs to be at around 28 to 30, 32 degrees when it's molting. Yes. So the bird is encouraged to shed as much as possible. And baths 2 to 3 times a week would be great. When it's breeding season, you want the temperatures to go down to even 18, 16 degrees. That's not a problem. 20 is ideal. 20, 22 is perfect. But if it goes down a little bit or stays, as long as it's below 24, in my personal opinion, and that's not just because for the bird, but it's also because of the diet. Because, when you have chicks, you want to offer soft food. Yes. Offering soft food, it can go off when temperatures are more than 24. Yes. So we try to keep the temperature as reasonably low as possible, between 20 to 22 during that time.
Funny you talk about the cycle, and that's why I asked the question. So in South Africa, we tend to have this dual mindset. The one is that the traditional breeding season, so going into winter, they breed until typically most breeders stop breeding by August or end of August type scenario. Some of the guys, though, they found that they were losing chicks in the nest when the parents stopped sitting at day 8 to 10, typically. So they've basically conditioned their birds to breed as summer breeders, but they're breeding typically those breeders are breeding in aviaries, not in bird rooms. One of my very good friends, Colin and them, they breed like that. And they've actually had a very successful season. They've been doing it for a good couple of years now. And both last year and this year, they bred a good volume of birds through breeding it in summer. Now, I've kind of stuck to what I consider the traditional breeding season of the bird, which is more the winter. But it's interesting because you get those different schools of thought, and it's different approaches once again, which is why we're having these kind of discussions to say, okay, well, maybe our way is not the only way to think about it. Maybe there is different ways of doing it. So it's fascinating hearing your sort of temperatures, your daylight hours, that kind of thing, because it's interesting to see where we compare and that kind of thing. So I think why, just to put it in perspective, our winters get down to 0 and sometimes below where we live. So yeah, the chicks, I mean, I had one, and I actually did an episode about this the other day, where I had a single chick in the nest. The other eggs were infertile or didn't hatch or whatever the case might be. And at the typical day 8, 9, when the parents stop sitting, that first night it was alone, because it was by itself, it was virtually frozen to death by the next day. So I walked in, I had a feeling... I had a feeling it was going to be a problem, so I immediately checked. I was right. I took it out, warmed it up in my hands. It reanimated, as we say locally, where it sort of came back to life. Gave it a little bit of vitamin water and that kind of thing, just to give it a bit of a boost until the parents looked after it again. And then I put it back in the box. And with the next day, it was a little bit, but not as bad. And then by day 2 or 3 of being by itself, it was strong enough and fine, and it has fledged since and is doing very well. But the point is that because of our winters being quite cold, if you're not heating your bird room, or if they're breeding in an aviary, a lot of the guys experience where they'll lose the entire nest. The crops are full. The parents have done their job. But because of the temperatures, the chicks just can't survive. So as a result, some of the guys are trying, particularly the aviary breeders, are trying to breed in summer rather.
Yeah, that's very fascinating insight, actually. I agree with you that if possible, wherever possible, and it's not very expensive to heat the aviary, to be very honest with you. I mean, you can have ceramic lamps, you could have the red lamps, and they're good for about 4 square meter kind of radius. You don't want to heat the bird to the extent that it's like 20 degrees. But I've noticed that personally, breeding with Gouldians at around 14 and 15 degrees is pretty much okay with them. Yes. So if you can tip it to that level where a timer starts when the sun sets, and now you have these kind of lights that are giving the bird some visual ability at nights. Because what happens is, suppose there is a sound or anything, like fireworks, for example, because it's Christmas or something, the birds will abandon the nest out of fear, but how to go back again? So with that flight, it gives you the ability. It's not that distracting or annoying for the bird to sleep, but in the same time, it offers heat and it offers light. On the other side as well, I noticed that in wintertime, it would always help the birds if you're doing a notch higher on the fat content of the seed. For example, if you're looking at hemp seed, if you're looking at Niger seed, those kind of seeds will help the birds stay warm under the feather. Yeah. So it gives motive to stay longer. And you feel bad for the birds because they stay still on the eggs for quite a while. So you want to give them that kind of energy.
Yes.
And a lot of the breeders think that food is the seed mix, but it's not. If a bird was free to go and pray for its own diet, you would see it doing all kinds of things to stay warm at night. The crop might be full, but is it full with starch? Or is it full with fat and starch and protein? So the composition of the diet is our duty as breeders, especially in wintertime. Similarly, in summertime, you want to cut down fat whatsoever in summertime. Just think about it, grabbing a bar of Snickers or a bar of butter, and then when it's like 50 degrees centigrade outside, you don't want to do that. But when it's winter, you can get along with a bar of hefty bar of chocolate, for instance. It's just how the body warms itself up with sugar, right?
Just out of interest, I smiled when you were mentioning your austerity period. I know some breeders in this country that would actually consider that their breeding diet, where it's 60% canary and white millet and red manna. Whereas for most of us in this country, our austerity is even more severe than that, where it's literally red manna and I add a small percentage of white millet. So once again, it's interesting to sort of hear those differences. And
so for you, the austerity is majority is red millet, eh?
red manna for a month. For 30 days, that's all the birds eat. And they trim right down, but it's harsh. It's harsh on the birds. So,
yes.
So interesting.
Well, it has its benefits. It has its benefits. So we're not. Let's just be clear on our austerity. Some people think that we are starving the birds. No. We're not starving the birds. It's like allowing the bird to reset. You're allowing the bird to cleanse. And obviously, if a bird is not surviving that kind of harsh diet, then it's because it's not well. It's ill, actually. So it will be off that austerity diet. It will be given proper diet. And maybe you will consider it being a breeding bird, or, maybe it can be in an aviary where it can enjoy the rest of its life. 100%. But it's really it's a screening cycle, right?
Correct. And I just want to touch on that, because I think if there's someone watching that maybe doesn't know the cycle, they might think, how can you just give them one type of seed or whatever? So in the wild, they would, in the harsh season when there's not a lot of food available. So in other words, it's towards the end of the dry season, the rains haven't come yet, there's very little food available. Naturally, the birds are on diet. And that's where I think breeders, they think they must give the best food 12 months of the year, and then they wonder why they have obesity problems, where they then have fertility issues and all that kind of thing. It's not normal for a wild bird to have the best food for 12 months of the year. There's going to be peaks and troughs. So I think it's important people realize that we're mimicking what happens in the wild. It's not that we're being cruel to the bird, for lack of a better word. It's part of a very important cycle to be able to get that maximum health ultimately and successfully breed the bird.
So. Yeah, when I actually did it, I did it in 2018. One of my friends called me a big risk taker. A more appropriate word was crazy. And I told them, listen, I've read about it. The first time I came across it, it was from an article of Dr. Robert Marshall. Okay. So I read about it, and I kind of got convinced with the whole analogy, because in the wild, not only the seeds are scarce because of the dry season, but it's also because of cattle grazing and because of fire. So the bird is actually eating dust and eating minerals to satisfy itself compared to seeds. Now, it's not as harsh in any person's aviary, I agree to that, but there's a very critical factor, which is you want to clean the bird so that you can start the cycle much stronger when the season comes. You want the females to be in sync with the males. And that is the great advantage of having the austerity, at least for 2 to 3 weeks. If possible for a month, then it's great. But I noticed that the benefits kick off even when it's 2 weeks is good enough. If you're like, you want to catch up, you're late in the season, for example, just do it. And you will see the birds will sing less, will slowly stop singing, but they're ready. They're waiting for something. And the moment you start gradually introducing seed mixes and gradually starting egg foods and herbs, and they will just flourish. It's like there is an explosion now happening in the aviary, from a kind of a very quiet place, it became a very lively place. So that transformation takes about 2 days, and then you know that you're ready.
And you touched on something that I just want to reiterate, and that is the austerity isn't just about putting the birds on diet. It's about dropping the hormone levels. And you mentioned it. It's about bringing your cocks and your hens into synchronization. Fascinating. The last thing that I wanted to chat to you is, so assuming now for a second I'm in Bahrain and I'm looking to join a club. What does the Bahrain Gouldian Community, I think you said that is the correct name of the club. What do you offer members? Let's put it that way.
Well, you don't have to be in Bahrain to join us. It's an honor to have you with us. We are an international community. We have a member from Scotland. We have the rest of our members are from Middle East and North Africa. Predominantly, it's the Arabic-speaking platform, the only one in the Arab world, and the specializing in Gouldian Finches. I wanted it to be predominantly in Arabic because I wanted to raise the awareness in this kind of part of the world about the Gouldian Finches, and we have succeeded very nicely. So it's a family more than anything else. It's where we come, share knowledge out of passion in a very respectful manner. Now, when you join us, we look at doing fun stuff together with and without Gouldian Finches. And I believe that a lot of the time, if you focus on purely feathers, you get saturated. So it's about melting the ice. It's about knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your peers in the club, in the community. For example, just a month ago, we went out to learn for the very first time how to golf.
Okay.
And it was interesting. It was a very interesting experience. We had a blast, and then, it was like nothing to do with Gouldians, but then these are the Gouldian passionate people, the Gouldian passionate community coming together, doing something. And you know what? These kind of things bring us together stronger.
So it gives you that social, that to get to know each other, essentially.
Okay. Exactly. And 3 months ago, we went into a sea trip where we went to a secluded island that had lots of washed out plastic. And we took care of that, for example. We had our garbage bags and we cleaned the whole beach. We had a lovely lunch in this island. It was fascinating. Now, this is the fun part of things. Then on the other side, we have workshops.
Okay.
We have a ton of lectures. We have established the WhatsApp group that is only for the members, and questions get asked here. Even the members who are non-Arab speakers, they use Google Translator, for example, to pop their questions. So the questions keep coming and going back. And then we use the platforms like Instagram and Facebook, mainly Instagram, because for the busy people like myself, it's easier to populate as much as possible from the breeding of the members. So this is bred by XYZ from this country. This is bred by, so the awareness gets risen slowly. And then we try to get involved with 2 major shows every year. One show is purely where we host external judges, and that happens in December. And people like myself, I can participate with my own birds as well. And then there's another show that takes place around March time. It's like a spring kind of festival, all kinds of animal welfare. So we as bird keepers also get a chance. So we can also then participate in this kind of show. And then this will be an opportunity for the local judges to come and participate, not of course with their own birds, but they start judging the birds of others. Okay. Then we also have a program to graduate local judges, and that is only available for the members. So if you're interested in becoming a judge for Gouldian Finches, then there's a program in place. And you can enter that by starting with a kind of assessment test to know your level and where you should start, whether you're advanced, whether you're just a pure beginner, for example. So after the assessment quiz, you get to know where you should start. And then the program takes about 6 months to 12 months, depending on where you start.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And I think that's definitely, we need to have more of these conversations. I think we scratched the surface on so many issues and so many topics. And it's been absolutely fascinating. I've loved it. So
It's lovely. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's a great pleasure to be here. Time spent with friends that share the common interest, especially when it's Gouldian Finches, is never a time that is to be taken lightly. It's always a time that is of joy. It's of happiness. And looking forward to having more of these sessions as well. Thank you so much for putting all this effort together for us readers, followers. We follow the channel, and all the members also love your contributions to that channel. Keep it coming.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.